I'm Ron Paul. I'm a congressman from Texas, serving in my 10th term. I am the champion of the Constitution.
It's unthinkable that you would leave Saddam Hussein in charge of Iraq and be able to fight the war on terror. Iraq is part of the overall terrorist war against the United States.
The sooner we come home, the better. If they declare there's no progress in September, we should come home. It was a mistake to go, so it's a mistake to stay. If we made the wrong diagnosis, we should change the treatment. So we're not making progress there, and we should come home. The weapons weren't there, and we went in under UN resolutions, and our national security was not threatened. We're more threatened now by staying.
What I want to just mention is that it is not the size of the dog in the fight, it is the size of the fight in the dog, and we underestimate, grossly underestimate, how fierce this dog is and how determined they are to destroy every last one of us.
About terrorist states. Iran is the lead sponsor of terrorism, which is the lead sponsor of terrorism in the world, I think, and with our allies like Israel.
We have license to utilize anything that we want to use.
Look, this is a national security issue, first and foremost. Ever since 9/11, it's a national security issue.
It doesn't provide for a uniform database. On September 11, when we tried to figure out who was in this country, it took weeks to figure out who were the right people and who weren't, because there isn't such a database. And that is a fatal flaw in this legislation, and wishing it away doesn't make it possible.
Governor Romney,
it doesn't provide for a uniform database.
Congressman Paul, I want you to weigh in on this as well. I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, you voted to support that 700-mile fence along the border between the United States and Mexico. Did you?
I did.
What about Canada? Is there a need for a similar fence along the border between the United States and Canada?
No, because that bill, probably the fence, was my weakest reason for doing that. But for other reasons, to enforce the law was important. And border security is important. And we've talked about amnesty, which I'm positively opposed to. But one thing that has not been mentioned here, which I think is very, very important, if you subsidize something, you get more of it. So we subsidize illegal immigration. We reward it by easy citizenship, either birthright or amnesty. But we force our states and our local communities to pay for the health care and pay for the education. Why wouldn't they bring their families? And because of our economic conditions, we do need workers. But if we had a truly free market economy, the illegal immigrants would not be the scapegoat. We would probably need them and they would be acceptable. But because of economic conditions, they have become the scapegoat.
Thank you, Congressman. Congressman Paul, you ran for president once before as a libertarian. What do you say about this whole issue of church and state and these issues that are coming forward right now?
Well, I think we should read the First Amendment where it says Congress shall write no law, and we should write a lot less laws regarding this matter. It shouldn't be a matter of the President or the Congress. It should be local people, local officials. The state should determine so many of these things that we just don't need more laws determining religious things or prayer in school. We should allow people at the local level. That's what the Constitution tells us. We don't need somebody in Washington telling us what we can do, because we don't have perfect knowledge. And that's the magnificence of our Constitution and our republic. We sort out the difficult problems at local levels, and we don't have one case fit all, because you have a Supreme Court ruling like on Roe versus Wade. It ruined it for the whole country. And that's why we shouldn't have it at a central level.
Thank you, Congressman. Let's go back to another question from Tom.
Mayor Giuliani, sea levels around the world are rising, average temperatures are increasing. A UN report written by scientists from 113 countries recently said that climate change is very likely man-made and may affect us for centuries to come. Is science wrong on global warming, and what, if any, steps would you take as president to address the issue of climate change?
Well, I think we have to accept the view that scientists have, that there is global warming, and that human operation, human condition contributes to that.
Let me bring Congressman Paul back into this conversation. In 2005, President Bush signed an energy bill that provided billions of dollars in tax break subsidies to the oil companies with the goal of boosting domestic production at a time of these record profits. Do you believe these companies need a helping hand from the federal government?
I don't think the profits is the issue. The profits are okay if they're legitimately earned in a free market. What I object to are subsidies to big corporations when we subsidize them and give them R&D money. I don't think that should be that way. They should take it out of the funds that they earn. But I'm also, you can't discuss energy without discussing our foreign policy. Why do we go to the Middle East? You know that oil is very important about the Middle East and why we're there. Why did our government, help overthrow Mossadegh in 1953? It had to do with oil. So our foreign policy is designed to protect our oil interests. The profits, that's not the problem. It's the problem that we succumb to the temptation to protect oil interests by literally going out and fighting wars over oil.
Congressman Paul, a question for you. Most of our closest allies, including Great Britain and Israel, allow gays and lesbians to openly serve in the military. Is it time to end Don't Ask, Don't Tell's policy and allow gays and lesbians to serve openly in the U.S. military?
I think the current policy is a decent policy, and the problem that we have with dealing with this subject is we see people as groups, as they belong to certain groups, and that they derive their rights as belonging to groups. We don't get our rights because we're gays or women or minorities. We get our rights from our Creator as individuals. So every individual should be treated the same way. So if there's homosexual behavior in the military that is disruptive, it should be dealt with. But if there's heterosexual sexual behavior that is disruptive, it should be dealt with. So it isn't the issue of homosexuality, it's the concept and the understanding of individual rights. If we understood that, we would not be dealing with this very important problem.
The Republican Party as a whole deserved to get beat. We've lost credibility. The way we bungled Katrina. The fact that there was corruption that was unchecked in Washington.
I want to just speak because he raised the issue. He raised the issue of corruption. Do you think it would be appropriate for President Bush to pardon Louis Scooter Libby, who was sentenced today to 30 months in prison for his role in the CIA leak case? I'll do a quick yes or no, and I'm going to go down the rest of the group and let everybody just tell me yes or no. Would you pardon Scooter Libby?
No.
No, I'm steeped in the law. I wouldn't do that.
No, not without reading the transcript.
Not without reading the transcript.
He's going through an appeal process. We've got to see what happens here.
I think the sentence was way out of line. I mean, the sentence was grossly excessive in a situation in which, at the beginning, the prosecutor knew who the leak was.
So yes or no, would you pardon
And he knew a crime wasn't committed. I recommended over 1,000 pardons to President Reagan when I was Associate Attorney General. I would see if it fit the criteria for pardon. I'd wait for the appeal. I think what the judge did today argues more in favor of a pardon because this is excessive punishment.
All right.
When you consider, I've prosecuted 5,000 cases.
Trying to get a yes or
here.
no.
Well, this is a very important issue. This is a very, very important. A man's life is at stake. And the reality is, this is an incomprehensible situation.
To get a yes or
here,
no.
They knew who the leak was, and ultimately, there was no underlying crime involved.
To get a yes or
here,
no.
This is one of those situations where I go back to my record as governor. I didn't pardon anybody as governor because I didn't want to overturn a jury. But in this case, you have a prosecutor who clearly abused prosecutorial discretion by going after somebody when he already knew that the source of the leak was Richard Armitage. He'd been told that, so he wanted a political vendetta.
Yes?
It's worth looking at that. I will study it very closely if I'm lucky enough to be president. And I'd keep that option open.
Senator?
Yes. The basic crime here didn't happen. What they were saying was that the identity of an agent was revealed, but that agent has to be in the field for that to be a crime. That didn't occur.
Bill Clinton committed perjury in a grand jury, lost his law license. Scooter Libby got 30 months. To me, it's not fair at all. But I would make sure the appeal was done properly, and then I would examine the record.
Congressman?
Yes.
Yes, all right. We heard from all of them.
And we will ask more young Americans to sacrifice as your brother did.
Ron Paul, I'm a congressman from Texas, serving in my 10th term. I am the champion of the Constitution.